Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to Slovenia once again, and that means we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the latest instalment of the Davor box. So a massive shout out and thank you once again to one of my long term subscribers, Davor Širet. He is responsible for the majority of the Slovenian beers that you see reviewed here on the channel, and he also sends me a few Belgian goodies as well. So every so often you will see some of Davor's Belgian beers being reviewed on here as well. So yeah, massive shout out and thank you to him for making this review possible once again. For this particular review, we're going to return to a brewery who are starting to get out there a little bit more actually, but they do some very nice beers based on my previous experiences. This is going to be review number 5 that we do from these guys, but it's a style of beer that I've never had from them before. So that makes me quite curious to see how this one turns out, and this beer also has a little bit of a Scottish reference in its title as well. So yeah, this should be quite interesting. So let's see where we go with this one. For this review we are going to go to Maribor in the northeast of Slovenia, the second city, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Pivovarna Lobik, or Lobik Craft Brewery as they're also known. This particular beer is called the Glock Ness Monster. It comes in at 13% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Stout. So at 13%, this one is a bit of a monster actually. I think this beer is going to be kind of crazy. But the last beers I had from these guys were all like IPAs and fruit beers and stuff like this, and they were very, very nicely done actually. So I'm very curious to see how these guys do the dark end of the spectrum. As I've told you before, I personally think that to get a proper feel for a brewery, you really need to have something from the very dark end of the spectrum like this, an Imperial Stout or an Imperial Porter or something like that, and you also need to have something from the light end, you know, a kind of New England hazy IPA or a West Coast IPA. A lager always gives you a good kind of third perspective as well, I would say. But yeah, definitely nice to return to these guys after maybe about a year. The other 4 beers that I reviewed from these guys were the Able Archer 83, which was a really nice IPA. Hop Hazard was also a really good one as well. We had the Desposito 2, which I think was an experimental beer, and that was a big New England triple IPA if I remember rightly. And there was also the Fruit Apocalypse Now, which was a really kind of interesting fruit ale from what I remember. So yeah, I've had 4 very, very good beers from these guys, but like I said, all at the lighter end of the spectrum, so it will be nice to see how these guys do the dark side of things. So yeah, curious to see how this one turns out. Like I said, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one, and a massive shout out and thank you once again to Davor Širet for making this review possible, my official Slovenian beer mule. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Lobik, from Pivovarna Lobik or Lobik Craft Brewery, whatever you want to call them, and you will see more added to that list in the fairly near future, I'm sure. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Slovenian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment, and it will continue to be added to regularly because we will have more boxes coming up from Slovenia through Davor, which is going to be awesome. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Pivovarna Lobik, Lobik Craft Brewery, however you want to call them. We'll just call them Lobik from now on, and I will apologise in advance for any bad Slovenian pronunciations, but people watching the last videos told me they were actually okay, so fingers crossed we carry on in the same vein in this one. So yeah, as I told you already in the video, Pivovarna Lobik are based in Maribor in the northeastern part of Slovenia, the second city, and the company was founded officially back in 2016. So the brewery was founded by a group of friends who began homebrewing together in 2008. This is Gregor Mumel, Alan Zaritz, Grega Boltitz, and also Vid Kulmanitz Bultsar. So the 4 friends met at rowing training, and they were too young to buy beer, so they decided to brew their own to kind of get around that, as you do as students. But initially they wanted to brew a lager beer, but then they learned through the internet that there was a whole host of different beer styles out there, and they just began experimenting away, and now they've ended up as a very experimental brewery, doing lots of IPAs and Imperial Stouts and sours and stuff like this. So yeah, these guys are probably one of the more kind of experimental breweries in Slovenia at the moment, from what I gather. But Alan and Gregor apparently work on the recipes together, although Gregor also apparently works as a doctor in Austria. Vid and Grega apparently deal with the distribution side and the sales side of the company, and they were students in Ljubljana, the capital city, and this really helped them make some good connections, so that's why they mainly focus on this side of things. But the original four are now joined at the brewery by Vid Zlemnik and also Aljaz Petric as well, so there's now 6 guys running this brewery from what I understand. But the name Lobik apparently translates into English as fat fish, and the idea behind this was because all the guys had met at the rowing training and they put a bit of weight on both from the training, from building up all the muscle, and from drinking the beer as well. So they thought that fat fish was quite a funny and quite appropriate name for them to go forward with their brewery. But they started off with a 60-litre brew kit, and they were brewing in a rented basement in Maribor, but then they opened up their own brewery in April 2016 in the Russia area, which has been doing very, very well. But they apparently are using most of their income that they make from the beers to invest for the future in like new tanks and a bigger brew kit and stuff like this, and they've already started exporting their beer from what I understand too. There are some of their beers going to Italy. They said that some of them are going to Scotland and Ireland as well actually, but I'm not sure where they would be being released in Scotland and Ireland actually. I haven't seen them going through, you know, the likes of Valhalla's Goat and things like that. So yeah, there's lots of different places that Lobik are going these days. I think in the Netherlands, I'm sure some of the Dutch guys that you've seen on the streams before, Thomas and Herben, Remy and Douglas, I'm sure they have had a good number of beers from Lobik before actually. So yeah, Lobik I'm pretty sure are in the Netherlands these days as well. But these days they've also got a tap room which opens up every Friday from 6 PM until midnight, and as of November 2020 when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 85 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So yeah, quite a prolific brewery when you consider they've only really had their own place for about 3.5 years. That is pretty impressive. But yeah, as I say, I've had some very, very good beers from these guys in the past, both on the New England hazy side of things, the fruity ales as well, and now hopefully the Imperial Stout is going to be good too. I'd love to try a West Coast IPA and a lager from these guys. Maybe that's the next thing that I need to get Davor to get for me from these guys. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Pivovarna Lobik for the moment. If you guys want to learn more about them, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and of course you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages, pardon me, to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. I'm very, very curious to see what this has in store for us. So as you can see, this beer, the artwork on it is pretty cool there. You can see the Lobik fat fish just doing his thing, riding the Loch Ness Monster. But the Loch Ness Monster certainly doesn't look too impressed. So yeah, that's how we know the Loch Ness Monster is Scottish, of course. Doesn't look too impressed. But yeah, 13% Imperial Stout this one. I do like that he's got a little bit of an eye patch and an eyeglass or whatever it is on there. But yeah, on the back there you can see the Lobik symbol there. I'm not sure how well that's going to show up in the light. I'll just tilt the can a bit so you can see. But yeah, really nicely presented can, this one. I actually don't know how much this one cost because you know, Davor told me what the final cost was, so I couldn't tell you exactly how much this one would cost. I would guess maybe about €6-7, something like that, considering it's a big 13% beast. But yeah, it doesn't really say so much on the side of the can about the beer either, but I have to say, lovely artwork on this one, and I probably will keep a hold of this one. I still have the Able Archer 83 can from these guys because I just loved the kind of Vietnam, sorry, the kind of Hueys and the helicopters and tanks and stuff that were on that one. It was named after that exercise that nearly started a nuclear war actually. So yeah, these guys always have very inventive names for their beers actually. You'll have to give Lobik that. They do have some really, really good names for their beers. But yeah, 330ml can this one, 13% ABV Imperial Stout. So let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. So yeah, as I've told you before, there are various very nice craft breweries in Slovenia these days. Reservoir Dogs, I'm trying to think who else we've had. We've had Omnivar recently, Tectonic. I'm probably forgetting the names of quite a few of them just because it's gone out of my head. Green Gold, they very kindly sent me some beers to review for you on the channel earlier in the year when the whole COVID-19 thing sort of kicked off. That was pretty awesome, I have to say. So yeah, that was It was Luka Roynik from the brewery there, because that brewery is of course based on the Roynik hop farm. As I've told you, if those of you who are not familiar with the Slovenian beer scene, the Slovenians of course have a thriving hop industry as well. They've got some really great hops down there: Slovenian Wolf, Slovenian Dragon, and lots of other kind of things. Dana, Styrian Goldings being more classic hops as well. There's a great beer industry, and there's great infrastructure for the beer industry down there in Slovenia as well. But being a small country of only about 2 million people, of course, they're, and being right next to Austria, they were part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, of course, for a long time. Some of that culture from Austria has kind of seeped in, and that's that's kind of what the basis of their that's what the basis of what the Slovenians are now doing. At least that's my impression of it. But yeah, it'd be really cool to try a few kind of Vienna lagers and stuff like this, I think, from Slovenia. We've done one already, the Sisi from Omnivar. But yeah, the Slovenians, they've got great hops down there. They really know what they're doing when it comes to brewing, in my opinion, and you'll find some really great beers there. Just go to one of the shops in Slovenia or Maribor, pick out a few things, and you're not going to be disappointed. There are some very, very good beers down there these days, and Lobik are certainly one of the breweries to keep an eye out for. But yeah, you can tell just from looking at this beer, this thing is an absolute monster. So if we put the light through this one, you can see this beer is pretty much black as night. This beer is just absolutely crazy, a black as night beer. That the light gives you a little bit of a kind of slightly Coca-Cola coloured edge to it. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass. There's a few little tiny bubbles just going round, kind of sticking to the side of the glass as well, and quite a few going up towards the surface there. There's virtually no head on this one. When we poured the beer, there was a little thin kind of wispy layer of a very dark tan head on this beer, but yeah, that's faded away. There's just a tiny little bit of bubble stuck around the side of the glass there, but it certainly looks very, very nice, this one. And you can see just from shuggling this beer about, you can really see from that, just look at the lacing this leaves on the glass. This thing is an absolute monster of a beer. And the thing you're going to get with these high alcohol beers is, when you have such a dark colour like this, the colour of your beer depends on two things. One, the type of malts that you use, and two, the length of boil. A big 13% Imperial Stout is going to, have a very long boil anyway, but you're also going to need to let the sugars kind of caramelise. And this one might even be a double mash stout. If it's 13%, I do wonder, maybe this is a double mash stout actually to get it that high. But yeah, it's certainly, with the level of lacing and stuff you can see on the glass here, this one certainly looks the part. So nothing surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. A lovely, very dark, ebony kind of rosewood colour, exactly what you would expect from an Imperial Stout. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma of this one then, and just see how we get on. I think this beer is going to be an absolute monster. Oh yeah, straight away, what I'm going to say about this beer though, this one, it actually strikes me as a really kind of subtle but very deep aroma that you get out of this one. I really like how that goes together with this one. It almost smells a little bit kind of infused and kind of barrel aged, to be honest with you. I like how this goes together. Yeah, the aroma of this beer is absolutely lovely. I really, really like how this goes together. I mean, straight away with this beer, you can smell a little bit of the roasty, toasty black backbone, but to me that's quite minimal. The thing that really forms the backbone of this beer is it's got a very kind of slick, high cocoa chocolate note in there, like a 70-80% cocoa chocolate there. That slickness is really what forms the backbone of the aroma for me. You can smell a lot of highly caramelised brown sugar in this one as well. It's got a very dark, oily, treacly molasses sort of thing coming out of it, this beer, definitely. Those are the three kind of things with the backbone. It's got a wee bit of a woodiness in there as well, actually. But for me, the aroma of this beer is remarkably subtle for the ABV and the kind of beer that is, because I remember the other beers that we had from these guys, the aromas were actually quite punchy from what I remember. So this is a really interesting one from that side of things, I have to say. So yeah, definitely the more you smell of it, the more you can smell a little bit of a toasty, well-fired bread crust and a little bit of a kind of brown bready sort of thing. But yeah, I would stick with that and say that the kind of chocolatey notes in there and the highly caramelised brown sugars, they are what really, really form the backbone of the malty side of this beer. It's a lovely aroma that you get out of this, and I think it goes together really nicely. You will pick out a few little things like you might get tiny little hints of like a tobacco-y note out of the beer. You might also get some really nice kind of nutty things out of the beer as well. You know, you can really pick that out there, and it does, to me, the beer does have a little bit of a kind of woody backbone to it as well. But there's nothing surprising about this beer in terms of the aroma, other than the fact that it's actually quite subtle. So the malty backbone of this beer is quite interesting, and to be honest with you, I'm really not sure exactly how this one is going to turn out in the flavour profile because of that level of subtlety that it has. Even when we sugar this beer up, you know, even when we sugar it up, it just kind of matches together. In fairness, when you do sugar it up a little bit, you do get a wee bit of that kind of toasty, well-fired, bread crusty sort of thing, but mainly it's actually quite a subtle aroma, this one. I really like how all of this goes together, so it gets a big thumbs up from me on the malty side of things. On the hoppy side of things then, on the hoppy side of things, we've got a little bit of you can pick up a little bit of earthiness out of this one. You do get a little touch of floral note out of it and a wee bit of grassiness, but the hops for me don't play so much of a role in this one, to be quite honest with you. I'm really not sure what exactly to expect of this one, I have to say. Yeah, this beer, I think, I really don't know what to say about the aroma. It's so subtle, you really have to search for the different components of it, to be honest with you. On the fruity side of things, I mean, yeah, we'll sugar it up a little bit. You do get a wee bit of a raisiny sharpness out of it when you sugar the beer up. There is a little bit of a kind of figgy juiciness in there, and you can get some blackberry, blackcurranty type aromas out of this beer as well. A little bit more of that kind of oily blackcurranty, blackberry sort of thing. So yeah, I really like how the aroma of this beer goes together. It's a very subtle one, and you really need to search for all those different components actually. So just take a little bit of time and enjoy that aroma before you get stuck into it. I think this one's going to be a very interesting one to taste, just because it's difficult to kind of think about what this beer is going to be because of how subtle that aroma is. But yeah, let's have a taste of this one then. So this one is the Glock Ness Monster, a 13% Imperial Stout from Pivovarna Lobik craft breweries, they're also known, in Maribor in the northeastern part of Slovenia. Once again, a huge thank you to Davor Širitz for making this review possible, one of my long-term subscribers, so yeah, huge thank you to him for this one. Slanje, skål, na zdravje. Oh yeah. Now that's a really nice beer. This one, I'm just going to say straight away, this is absolutely solid. Absolutely solid stuff. It's one of these ones, I'm getting the impression from this just on the sip, it starts off like really oily and sweet, but not madly sweet. But then you can really feel a bit of dryness building out of this one the further that you go into the aftertaste. So I guess in that sense, this beer really reflects the kind of unassuming aroma that you get out of it. It's one of these ones where the flavour really just starts to kind of open up a little bit. So this is really interesting, I have to say. Thumbs up to Lobik for this. I'm going to say yeah, straight away, this is an awesome beer. But to really get what this thing's doing, you've got to spend a little bit of time with it and let it open up, definitely. So yeah, with this beer then, like I say, you're going to notice when you take this beer, and it's very slick, very kind of silky. That's the big, highly caramelised brown sugars, the kind of chocolatey notes coming out of it. But what you'll notice is that in the middle of your palate with this beer, middle third of your tongue, back third of your tongue, you're going to feel that the base of this, it's a very kind of roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust that you're getting out of this one. I do think there's some sort of carafa in this one, because the kind of dryness that you get out of this beer, it's not quite as roasty and toasty, it is more that kind of well-fired bread crust, so that's what makes me think carafa in this one, some sort of carafa malt rather than a special B, which is obviously a very popular one for big Imperial Stouts. So yeah, for me, the base of this beer, you've got that lovely, toasty, well-fired, quite dry black backbone to the beer, but on top of that, you do get a wee bit of the kind of almost slightly sweet, brown bready, German rye bready kind of thing actually. I really like how this goes together. So yeah, I really like this beer. This has got a really good balance between it. It's got a nice dryness that lingers there out of it. And the thing you're going to notice as well, if you go to the front corners of your palate, then just move diagonally back, you're going to get a few kind of woody elements coming out of this beer. The tobacco-y thing I was picking up in the aroma, I don't really get that in this beer in fairness, but if you go to the middle of your palate, the dead centre, and then just move forward, you are going to notice a few kind of nutty elements pushing their way out of this beer as well. Like I said, for me, this one is really nice. It's actually, it strikes me as being a fairly simple Imperial Stout, to be honest with you. I wouldn't be surprised if there's only maybe 5 or 6 different kinds of malt in this one, although in fairness that is fairly complex when you think about it. But I don't think this beer, this is a beer that really strikes me where they've kind of gone down the route, let's do something quite simple in terms of recipe, but just make sure that it's really well crafted. That's the vibe I get out of this beer. It's quite a straightforward beer, this one. They're adding no adjuncts and stuff like that into it. They're not barrel aging it in a certain way. They just want to do a solid, smooth and nice Imperial Stout, and that's exactly what they pulled off here. So yeah, I'm really impressed with this one, I have to say. It takes a completely different approach to the style compared to a lot of other ones that I've had in recent times, and that's probably why I like it so much. So yeah, the backbone of this one though is really, really nice. So we've talked about that baseline of the beer. If you go towards the back third of your palate, you can feel there are a few kind of more roasty, toasty, black malty sort of things coming up, but you can feel the beer just thickens up a wee bit on the, it just thickens up a little bit on the back third of your palate. I wouldn't be surprised if this beer has a little bit of wheat in it. Although in fairness, if it had wheat, it would probably have had a little bit more head than it has. Maybe this one's got a little bit of oat or oatmeal in it. Maybe this is more like an Imperial oatmeal stout, because it really has a good little bit of smoothness to it. Because on that back third of the palate, as you come forward from the very, very back, you feel a real smoothness to this beer. It does that kind of almost breadiness and smoothness, just thickens up a wee bit. But in the middle third of your palate, you can feel the thickness just drops away a little bit, and on top of that base that I was talking about, you start to get, there is a slightly creamy layer that's almost, it is almost just a little touch kind of oaty and things there. That I've got a feeling there might be oats or oatmeal being used in this beer, which would make sense. Does it actually say the ingredients on this one? Well, it does, but it just yes, so it's got Haver, which it's German, so that is, yeah, it's got oats in it. I was right, yeah, it's got oats in it, and that definitely makes sense with this one. You can really feel that in the mouthfeel of this one. It's got that lovely smooth oaty character that sits in the middle of the palate, but on top of that oaty character there, you're getting the chocolate out of this one, and the chocolate, again, I think the oats give the chocolate an impression of a bit of milkiness, you know, like a kind of 30% cocoa sort of thing, a more milky chocolate, but then you also get some of the kind of darker cocoa elements out of this beer as well. Yeah. And you do, in fairness with this beer, yeah, you do get a bit of that. It does almost come across as like, you get a bit of milky chocolate out of the beer, particularly more towards the centre of the palate, but as you move further out from it, you do start to get a little bit more of a kind of, you know, 80, 90 cocoa chocolate sort of thing. It's almost got a little bit of that kind of powdered, charred type chocolate note to it as you move further out from the centre of your palate as well. But yeah, in the very centre of your tongue you do get a nice little bit of brown sugar. There's a very heavy kind of treacle molasses sort of thing comes out of this beer, and I really do like how that goes together. Yeah, I mean, I think the more and more that I drink of this beer, it does start to lean more towards that toasty, well-fired, bread crusty side of thing, and I do like that about it. The sweetness, I think, just starts to take a bit of a back seat as you go further into this one. So I like that this beer has that roasty, toasty backbone to it, to just let you know this is an Imperial Stout, but I love the smoothness that the oats give you in this one. I don't know if this is, if you could I don't know if it's oats or oatmeal that's in this, I really don't know, because there would be a slight difference in the mouthfeel, I would think, but it has that lovely kind of oatmeal stout type smoothness to it, this one. And the further you go into the aftertaste, you do get more of the kind of chocolate sitting there, and you do get a little bit more of that kind of brown sugary element as well. But the malty side of this beer is beautifully done. I think we spent quite a bit of time on the malt base there, and in fairness, this is definitely not the most complex of Imperial Stouts that you're going to come across, but it's so well crafted, and when you can craft an Imperial Stout like this, you don't need it to be complex, you really don't. And that's what really stands out about this one for me. On the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate you do have a nice little bit of earthiness in this. I do wonder if it's Summit or something that they have in here. There is just something familiar about this, and I think Summit is quite a popular hop to use in these kind of big Imperial Stouts. But yeah, as you move further forward along the side of the palate, the earthiness kind of dies away a little bit. There's a wee bit of herbal quality, then as you reach the front corners of the tongue, you've got a nice little bit of a floral aromaticity to the beer, but it's quite subtle. That I would say it is fairly subtle. It's not madly kind of prominent. As you go round the front curve of the palate, there's a little bit of a lighter kind of grassy note to the beer, and it does in fairness have a little tiny bit of zestiness to it, which is quite interesting. I'm not sure exactly where that would be coming from in this one. It's difficult to place exactly what kind of fruity hop you would be getting out of this one. It could have a little bit of maybe Bramling's Cross or something in it, but in fairness, if you had Bramling's Cross, you would have a little bit of a slightly kind of phenolic type fruity note to it, and this one definitely doesn't have that. So yeah, we've covered the hoppy side of the beer. Let's have a little look at the fruity side of things. So if you go to that front third of your palate, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy, oily, fruity notes kind of just roll their way out of the beer in this one. If you go to that border region between front third of your palate and middle third of your palate, you get more of a kind of toasty, you do get a little bit of that toasty kind of well-fired cakey sort of thing in there. So that's quite interesting too. But if you go towards the very back of that front third of your palate, there's a wee bit of a plummy, raisiny sort of thing. When you take the beer in, it definitely has a wee bit of a raisiny sharpness to it, which is interesting. Yeah, so when you first take that beer in, quite a bit of a juicy plummy note in there, but just a little touch of raisiny sharpness, and that sits there at the back of that front third of your palate. But as you move further forward on this one, you do get a little bit of the juicier kind of figgy thing, but underneath these fruits you do get a little bit of that toasty, bread crusty sort of thing pushing up to the front tip of your palate. Actually does start to get quite dry in this one, but then as you reach the very kind of front tip of your tongue, almost just behind that, you have that little more oily part of the tongue where you're getting like black currants and blackberries. So got a little bit of the juicier blackcurrant and a wee touch of the sharper blackberry. I would say this one needs a little bit more kind of blackcurranty and things. Like I say, I would suspect that it's Summit hop that's in this. It could be various other things. You know, you could have Northern Brewer from Germany, and with this being a Slovenian brewery, I wouldn't be 100% surprised if they were using some of the German hops, because you know their traditional beer is kind of based on the Austrian and German stuff. I think that's a fair statement to make. So yeah, it wouldn't be surprising if there was a bit of Northern Brewer in this, but then again the earthy qualities are a bit stronger, so that makes me wonder about Summit. And I think if it was Northern Brewer, the how do you say, the figgy notes would just be a little bit stronger, to be honest with you. It'd be just to feel a little bit more juicy than it does. It could be one of the Slovenian hops, right enough. As I say, I don't know which of the Slovenian hops would fit best in an Imperial Stout, right enough. That's something I would like to talk with Luka Rojnik from Green Gold Brewing about. I'd love to do an interview with him just about the hops and the Slovenian hop kind of scene. As well as one about Green Gold Brewing, but yeah, I'm not sure exactly what Slovenian hop would fit this beer so well, to be honest with you. So let me know, and if you're watching from Slovenia, let me know which Slovenian hop would work well on an Imperial Stout, because I genuinely don't know. But I can tell you that Slovenian hops are pretty damn good. So yeah, this one's got a really nice fruity character to it. It's got a little bit of oiliness, but like I say, some of the dry kind of roasty toasty notes push their way out of this beer underneath the fruity side of things. So yeah, I really like how this thing goes together. That kind of covers the sort of flavour profile of this beer. As I said, overall to me this strikes me as quite a straight shooting, almost straightforward Imperial Stout, but it's just really well crafted. I think this one fits into the category of like an Imperial Oatmeal Stout. At 13% ABV, it's definitely a bit of a beast. I would not call this beer a pastry stout. By no means would I call this a pastry stout. It's just not sweet enough for that. This one I think finds a good balance between it really strikes me as more of an oatmeal stout. It's got a bit of that roasty toasty backbone, and while I do like these big pastry stouts, you know, I do think with an Imperial Stout you want it to have just a little touch of a roasty backbone, and that's exactly what you get out of this one. So this one for me I think just ticks a lot of boxes, and that's probably why I like it. But yeah, in terms of the the mouthfeel then. I think this is definitely a full-bodied beer for sure. Yeah, carbonation is very, very smooth. The mouthfeel is very kind of oily and silky, which is kind of what you would expect from this beer style. In terms of IBUs, I think this one, I don't find this too high. I think this one's about a 50 or a 60 IBU beer. It's really not madly high, either from the malt base or from the hoppy side of things in terms of its bitterness. You've got a nice degree, you've got a lot of smoothness and creaminess in the middle of your palate with this beer, and you've also got a nice big, you do have a little bit of the sweetness from the chocolate and the brown sugars that in this beer. I think it's very, very nicely done. But the fruits for me, a little bit sharp and juicy when you take it in, but then it just kind of juicens up and becomes a little bit more oily the further you go into the aftertaste. But I think fair to say this is a beautiful, beautiful stout beer, and I'm very thankful that Davor was able to send me this one. So I will be keeping hold of this can and using it for my display when I do get my own apartment and things. You will see a very nice background behind me on the channel at some point, hopefully in time for review number 3000. We'll see about that. But yeah, awesome beer this one, and you know, my hat off to Pivovarna Lobik, or Lobik Craft Brewery, however they want to be known, for this one. Lovely beer, and I've certainly enjoyed it, and I do like the Glock Ness monster reference in this as well. That's the main reason I'm keeping this can, in addition to the fact that the beer is good. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Beautiful Imperial Stout, this one, very smooth, like a very oatmeal stout, this one. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on the beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Pivovarna Lobik as well. We will return to these guys at some point very, very soon, and you know, it's been great to have this one for you here. So yeah, check out my social media, check out Pivovarna Lobik and their social media, and you will see more Slovenian beers coming up over the next little while. This one was the Glock Ness Monster, a 13% Imperial Stout. I think an Imperial oatmeal stout for this one, to be honest, from Pivovarna Lobik in Maribor in the northeast corner of Slovenia. Thanks for watching. Slanja, skål, cheers, and I'll catch you guys very soon. Na zdravje, and make sure you check out some of these Slovenian beers.